Here with us in New York is CBS News senior political editor Steve Chaggaris, and in D.C. we have Anna Palmer. She's a senior Washington correspondent at Politico. Anna will be with you in just a moment. I want to start with Steve first, though. Steve, today is a very big day in the Republican race. It could be make or break for some campaigns. What are you looking for today?
So two things I'm really looking at. I'm looking at the state of Ohio for both the Republicans and the Democrats. On the Republican side, it's winner take all, 66 delegates. We're going to see if Kasich, the governor, John Kasich, can win in Ohio and beat Trump. The polls are neck and neck there. And then obviously we'll look to see if Sanders can pull an upset in Ohio. He's polling with Hillary Clinton there. And the other state I'm looking at is Florida, which on the Republican side, again, is another winner-take-all state, 99 delegates. Trump is way ahead in the polls there. If he wins, it gives him a big boost in the delegate count. And if Rubio loses, the sitting senator from Florida, then it likely will spell the end of his campaign.
So, Anna, Steve mentioned how far ahead Trump is in Florida. He's pretty far ahead in most states, with the exception of Ohio. He's just a wee bit behind. Do you think he has enough steam to almost sweep this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is what everyone is looking at right now. He certainly is expected to have another big night. John Kasich has been closing in Ohio. That is kind of his last attempt to try to stop him. The other thing to really look at is, what does Senator Ted Cruz do here? He has been kind of focusing on a very targeted strategy in Illinois, trying to pick up some of these delegates to try to continue to make the case that it should be a two-person race.
Well, that's the question as well, Steve. Ted Cruz has been saying that he's the only one to be able to go head-to-head with Donald Trump and beat him in a couple of states. But if he doesn't really do well today, I mean, the math is in Trump's favor.
Sure, but where Cruz is looking, he's looking at Illinois, Missouri, and North Carolina, states that aren't winner-take-all. So he's looking to either win or pick up delegates in those states. And I think what he's looking to do as well is make sure that Marco Rubio loses in Florida so he can get him out of the race. Therefore, you've sort of shrunk the number of candidates that are left. And then moving forward, trying to pick up some more delegates. I think he's already written off the fact that he's not going to win Ohio, not going to win Florida, the winner-take-all states. So get as many delegates as he can in these non-winner-take-all states and then see what happens.
Anna, do you think Kasich should be concerned, though? I know Ohio is his state, but we're talking about an open primary, which means that other people can vote, people who maybe voted Democrat before, and that typically tips in Trump's favor.
Absolutely. I think this is not John Kasich. He has not secured this state by any stretch right now. I mean, he is closing strong. He's making the case. The question is really going to be, does the violence that was happening at the Trump rallies over the weekend, does that impact any of these voters? The one thing that is going to hurt him, too, is there's a lot of early absentee voters. We're going to know very early tonight. The polls close at 7:30, but because of all those absentee voters, we're going to know, whether or not he has a shot here. And if he doesn't, it's very hard to see him being able to soldier on, like he said earlier to you guys, that he was going to be in Pennsylvania tomorrow. If he does not win here in Ohio, or at least show a really strong showing, I think his future in the race is very uncertain, or if he doesn't drop out tonight.
Just some context for our viewers. That video that we were showing is a protester at a Donald Trump rally, Mr. Trump getting sort of surprised by somebody who was behind him. Steve, let's dig a little deeper into Marco Rubio. It feels, and we were talking about this earlier, as if the Republican Party has looked to establish Marco Rubio as sort of a Republican version of President Obama. They've been doing that for many, many years. He hasn't been able to gain traction nationally. This is what we're seeing right now. What's the future look like for him?
I mean, I'm not sure it's the entire establishment that tried to do that. If that was the case, he might have had a little bit more success. I mean, this field was so large, and he never really broke out of the pack. Even when he was doing well in the debates, he sort of had a ceiling in terms of where he was in the polls. And now that he's one of the only establishment candidates left, he still hasn't broken out of the pack. In fact, he's been sinking. Kasich's the one that's been rising a little bit. So what is his future? I mean, he's still young. He's 44 years old. He's not running for re-election to the Senate this year. There's a governor's race in Florida in 2018. Perhaps he goes for that. Perhaps if the Republican nominee doesn't win this year for president, maybe he runs again in 2020. But his future's bright. I mean, it's not like he totally embarrassed himself with this campaign. It's just he didn't gain any traction and is likely not going to get the nomination.
I thought one of the things that was sort of curious about about this is that there are a number of sort of mainstream Republicans, establishment Republican figures that were willing to say don't vote for Trump, but they weren't willing to say who to vote for.
Right.
And now we're seeing these attack ads, a lot of money. We just played one that's out today with with some of the quotes from Donald Trump and some of the negative quotes that he's had about women. But the question has to be, is this too little too late? I mean, none of this sort of negative stuff has really worked. It seems to bounce right off of him or bolster him.
Yeah, they never really came up with a solution to how to stop Trump. First of all, they started too late. This is something they probably should have recognized months ago, and they didn't. And so by the time they figured it out, which was a few weeks ago, it's too late. Trump already had started winning delegates. He got a lead in the delegate count. And now what you're doing is you're really now setting up an establishment versus anti-establishment mindset. And the anti-establishment now is going to dig in and say, these guys are trying to derail the guy that we like. And I think what you're just going to see moving forward is Trump's voters really coming out strong, passionate for Trump, and the establishment really, again, not offering an alternative. They're just saying don't vote for Trump. They're not getting behind any of the other candidates. They're not saying we're going to get behind a contested convention. They're not even offering that. They're just sort of throwing out ideas, and they're throwing up ads on TV that are anti-Trump, but not telling people what to do in lieu of that. And so, anyway.
Yeah, no, and Anna, I want to get your take on those ads that are targeting women voters because, and this is a question about the demographics that we're looking at in this race. Clearly, Mr. Trump is not doing well with women, and I wonder how someone can be considered as the GOP nominee if 50% of the people who are women don't like him. I don't know what the numbers are. Maybe your reporting can shed some light on the numbers of how unfavorable he's looked at by women.
Yeah, I would say two things. One, going back to the earlier point, the establishment Marco Rubio had a ton of endorsements, so he certainly had the backing of a lot of people, and that showed no kind of promise. Look at what happened in South Carolina, where he even had the governor who was very popular. As far as women voting and Republicans and what Trump is doing to that brand, after the 2012 election, the Republicans did a whole autopsy report, and one of the big keys that they took away from it was they have continued to do poorly with women. Trump's newest numbers are even worse than what Romney did. And so I think one of the big issues, certainly down ticket for congressional Republicans that they are very concerned about is what does that mean for some of their vulnerable Senate races, because it's unlikely that he's going to be able to make up some of this ground. I think you're going to see a lot of the Democrats hammer Trump on these issues if he is the eventual GOP nominee.